in terms of certain priorities just to keep operationally active. But other than that, there's simply not enough money for the demands. The SIU report and the previous CFO, the previous, I think he was permanent at the time, has been suspended or in fact dismissed, if I'm not mistaken, and we are engaging via the appropriate legal processes with that individual. The person that oversaw this financial year was an acting lady, and yeah, so the CFO under whose watch a lot of the legacy that we need to deal with today took place. There's a process ongoing there.
Chairperson, can you just mention you're saying there was an acting lady. Who's that acting lady? The name?
It's a lady by the name called Tabile Dlamini.
So is she part, are you also following on her, or you're not following anything about her with all the wrongs that you're saying?
As far as I know, Chairperson, through you, she's not implicated in any of the wrongs in the SIU environment. Definitely not.
But in terms of this report of the AG, what's your view about Tabile Dlamini? My apology. Wow. Chairperson, my apology. My apology,
Yeah, sure.
Comrade Batabile. My apology, Dlamini. Yeah, my apology.
Thank you.
You said Batabile who?
Tabile.
Tabile.
Yes.
Tabile Dlamini. Yes, no.
It's singular.
It's
Tabile.
singular. My apology, though.
Tabile.
Akufani lot. My apology is.
All right.
Thank you, Chair. So I think she did a lot of good work under very complicated circumstances, and yeah, I think she tried what she could.
Chairperson, my other worry is that it seems like SABC has accepted that they are going to solvency. I think that's my worry. I know it's true, it's something that we must talk about. But then, how are you going to do with it? Because, like my colleague has said, that it's a worry for all of us, it's a worry for South Africa. But you know, there are some other things, there are truths sometimes that you don't want even to accept. But the issue of solvency, it's something that is not either good for the country or either good for the broadcaster. But I think one thing that the AG has also mentioned is that you didn't have adequate risk management activities around the broadcaster on the going concern issue. Do you now have the risk management unit? Who's heading it, and is it in full complement?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think we've made significant inroads in the past 8 months in risk management. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, the finance department, who didn't have a risk register, does have one now. It speaks to, for example, the liquidity issues at the finance strategic level. It is being monitored. I did include a report on the latest status thereof. So I think it is slowly starting to get the attention in the organization that it needs to have. It's not fully capacitated or not as much as they would like it to be, certainly, I'm sure. But we are, and ultimately risk management is not the department's responsibility, it's every employee's responsibility. The department just monitors and reports on it. So it is about the risk management taking place at the operational level and us just monitoring and tracking it, and those things are in place.
You have forecasted your creditors' payables for the next financial year from 1.1 billion to 1.7 billion. But in a state of your financial health now, how are you going to deal with it? And currently, are you able to pay your creditors or your payables in time? And that, doesn't it affect your services or people who are bringing services to this regard? And how are you going to deal with them? Thanks.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, firstly, no, we're not able to pay our creditors in time. Our creditors' days are upwards of 90.
10 minutes.
It's upwards of 90 days. The only way we deal with it on a day-to-day basis is we've established, under the interim board, a payments committee was established who meets on a monthly basis to determine the priorities for the payments for the month. We typically start with the salaries, and then we pay things like rent and electricity and water just to be able to keep operationally active. Then we have arrangements with a number of our bigger service providers where we've entered into repayment arrangements with them, and because of the strategic nature of the relationships, they are able to support us. And then we have started to curtail our content acquisition as well. For example, per month it's meant to be around 140 million per month. We currently, I think in November, we are only going to be able to pay about 60 million of that. Of course, that has a knock-on effect because we're unable to put programs on air, which influences our ability to generate revenue. We also have more and more instances where suppliers are demanding payment in advance or do not want to work with us at all because of what's either in the media or then the history of not being able to pay. So we try to manage it on a day-to-day basis. We have a plan for December in place. We're trying to build up a little bit of buffer. We will be communicating to all parties what to expect. But the reality is in January specifically, the cash is dipping tremendously, and we are likely to barely make the salaries.
When I say 10 minutes, after 10 minutes you will have spent 30 minutes. You will have had 30 minutes. Here's the watch.
I asked 2 questions. This was my third one.
Your first question had multiple answers. That's why I had to tell her that your first question was very preliminary, but it required a multiplicity of responses. Gugu's watch says it's 20 past 11. I know it's 5 minutes behind, but it says 20 past.
Chairperson, you're making it difficult for me now. Very difficult, Chairperson. So, prepared for a week for this hearing. Then it's fine. I will now go to deviation, Chairperson. Although there are so many issues that I wanted to touch them here on the going concern, but because I wanted to talk now about the net loss. You highlighted the issue of film and sports rights, which the AG has also highlighted, which I think is the gist of SABC in terms of operations. So I wanted to hear, because whereas the expenses have decreased, but then the AG says that on the automation of programs, on films and sports rights, there's 236 million. I wanted us to talk about it because, Chairperson, when you interrupted, I wanted to talk on the issue of when she was responding on the issue of for them not being able to pay their creditors, which is it plays an important role, Chairperson, even in terms of assisting people who are still starting their businesses, who expect to get something out of the work that they have done. Then it's a problem if they can't be paid. But it's a problem that is known, but I wanted to expand on that one. But maybe let us move to the films and sports rights. Because at some other time I heard that there was, not that I didn't hear, I saw it, there was this, it's a SOPI or it's a what, which was stopped because there was lack of payment. It's an issue that affects all of us as South Africans. So I wanted you, ma'am, to touch on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe a quick answer to the so-called SMME kind of suppliers we have. We typically every month identify a minimum value. I think last month it was 200,000, where we pay everybody that we owe below 200,000.
I think it's wrong for her to refer to SMMEs as so-called SMMEs. It's belittling them. She can't say SMME. Can you really withdraw that?
Withdrawn, Chairperson. I just wanted to illustrate the smaller to medium service providers. My apologies for the wrong impression there. But we do prioritize them in our cash flow plans. The program film and sports rights, I'm not sure where the 200 is that you're referring to, ma'am. The specific audit opinion item, paragraph 11 in the audit report. It is about let me put it this way. All of program film and sports rights are treated like assets. And we therefore impair them or write them off as they are broadcast in terms of license agreements, etc. Because of our financial situation, we've got to broadcast more and more repeats. Now, that program was written off in the past already because it had been broadcast. Now we're forced to repeat it because we're simply unable to produce or procure fresh content. As a consequence, then, in terms of accounting, that asset needs to be revalued. And that is where the nature of this specific finding came from. The value has been very immaterial up until, I think, a year or two ago, where we were confronted with our liquidity issues, and as a consequence, we had to proceed with more and more repeats. Also, an item that we had a difference of opinion with the AG, and we are working to move towards finding each other.
I will then quickly, Chairperson, just move to deviations. There's an amount of about 34.8 million, which was incurred through deviations. Which are those contracts?
So, Chairperson, through you. So, the easiest way I can answer that, I don't have the Excel spreadsheets with me now where the detail will be visible, but I did submit a document with the top 5 deviations that's been identified. So you get the sense, and it's not necessarily, it's in the theme of potentially flagged as an irregular, which we now need to investigate to be able to confirm whether it is indeed the case. So it could be something like our fleet cards, because you didn't follow an open tender process. There are certain legal matters at the time, because for very specific reasons we placed the work with a specific firm. They were either busy with the work, etc. Or there might be, it's those kind of themes that you typically find under deviation, specific reasons why we chose to not proceed with a RFP or a RFQ, the standard procurement processes.
Let me just read a few of them that I have here. That the National Treasury, you've got a new website completion. The supplier is Creative Spark, which was paid 482,000. You've got the supply of IT resources to SABC. The supplier is Exponent Pty Ltd, System Skills Pty Ltd, and Buttress. And it says the National Treasury did not support them, but you went ahead. You've got Mushroom Cloud CC, an amount of 1.0 million. Preferred service provider, single source, conditional support. You also have CGF Research Institute, preferred service provider, not supported. I just want to assist you when you say you don't have a spreadsheet. I do have a spreadsheet that comes from the National Treasury. The question is that you did without the approval of the Treasury. Why?
Thank you, Chairperson. Through you again. So each one will have specific circumstances. With Creative Spark, for example, I happen to know that they were busy working on our website, and the decision was that when the contract value was depleted, that because the work couldn't sensibly be handed over to another service provider, that they proceed with the work. And so each of them, unfortunately, I don't have the detail in front of me, will have circumstances, but each of those circumstances needs to be investigated to confirm whether proceeding without National Treasury support
Well, I think,
was
look,
allowed.
No. It can never be allowed to proceed without National Treasury concurrence. That's the starting and the end point. If National Treasury has said no, you can't proceed. So, for me, Comrade Shulwan, it is just part of the lawlessness that we're talking about within financial processes. You can't. It is wrong. It is not allowed. A National Treasury will not say no without giving a reason and even telling you what you need to do. You know. So, for me, for each of those cases, as long as Comrade Shulwan, they proceeded without the permission of National Treasury, it is wrong. And the question becomes, who then okayed it? Was it at the board level? Was it at management level? Executive management level? Was it at at whatever level? That is what needs to be ascertained.
Yeah, Chairperson, I'm sure they will have to answer, because the other thing that I wanted to raise, it's on the ultimate media and blackface contract, which were not approved. And what I want to ask is, who then supplied the services? Because you said it was a single source. If it's a single source, why only one supply? Only one supply, when they were rejected by yourselves. It's on this one. This.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, like that is a document from Treasury, but I'm looking at my irregular expenditure register where we've got deviations, and I don't see them. So I'm unable to respond because I don't have the information that you have in front of you. But if I am supplied with it, we will certainly be able to respond to this committee.
So we are requesting the committee to do a workshop on your work. On your work, you are supposed to have read these documentations. Why should it be us now? Because it then says to us that you are not qualified for the job. You don't know what you are dealing with us about. Because these things, you are supposed to have known them more than us. For what are you being paid then? So these are the inefficiencies, of the board, of your own companies. How do we deal with this now? We need answers to be able to compare it to your statement of retrenchment. But this is inefficiency. And now the Member of Parliament can explain the issue of deviation because you have not read the document of Treasury or the Auditor General's report. How do we deal with that now? She's been very evasive throughout the morning.
All right.
Chairperson, just to add on that, I find it very difficult, ma'am, when you say it's a National Treasury document. It's a National Treasury document that came from you when you were requesting this deviation. And National Treasury didn't approve the deviations. And now you can't find it. It's quite really very much embarrassing. A lack of a better word, embarrassing, because these contracts are very much suspicious. 6 of them, and then others you do the single source, and you prefer a single provider. What does this single provider has other than the other? And it's a deviation that was not approved. So it raises some suspicion. Even if we can't get answers, it's suspicious, ma'am. I think we should get these answers.
Chairperson, if I may respond. Forgive me, sir. We did not that specific document, it looks like the reports we submit from my supply chain department on a quarterly basis to Treasury. It wasn't part of my pack here today. That's the only reason why I'm not sure what the member is looking at. I am looking at the registers that we did submit where the deviations are reported. And I would certainly, with respect, would have been able to respond if I just could see the information in front of me. So I really apologize.
Right.
I just don't.
That's fine.
Chairperson, I just want to ask one question. How much are your senior management earning per annum?
Why don't you ask the chairperson of the board so they don't answer about themselves?
Okay. Chairperson, it's directed to you.
Thank you.
Anyway, all the questions are actually supposed to be directed to the chairperson because the CFO reports to the board. Yes. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairperson. The top three executives, the CEO, the CFO, and the COO, all three of them earn about 12 million rands per annum. So that is about 0.4% of the total wage bill of 3.1 billion. If you compare it with previous executive, it's reduced significantly from what the previous executives used to earn.
When you say 12, you mean each or combined?
Combined, all three of them. So basically the CEO is at about 5.1 million, which is far less than what the previous CEO was. He was sitting on about 7.2 million.
Sorry, Chair, the previous CEO was stealing. Let's just have a
Okay.
clarification
No.
first.
Yeah, continue.
And then the CFO is on 3 million. Then the COO is at about 4.1 million.
All right.
So when you look at the previous, compared with the previous executive, it's significantly less than what they used to earn.
Is that the benchmark?
No, comrades. I think let's do this. No. We have the figures. I hear you. We've had the figures. That is what she wanted. And then we can. Yeah, comrade Shilwan.
No, thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson of the board. Out of this money, the top three that we would talk about, are they permanent now? When were they? When did you sign the contract with them differently?
Honorable Member, yes, they are permanent. The CEO was the last to join, but the first one who joined in February is the COO. So they are all on a 5-year contract.
Chairperson, for the matter of interest for the committee and probably for the country, did you headhunt them?
Honorable Member, we use all the avenues to attract top execs. So we had that on the government gazette. We also then did the headhunting, a combination of a number of initiatives to get the executives. Looking at where SABC is, we had to go to the market and look for people who are properly qualified with the relevant experience to get us out of the situation. And as a board, we've been very happy with the results. The fact that they've been able in a short space of time to put together a turnaround strategy that is comprehensive, that is starting to show some signs of improvement. Yes, of course, we're still in trouble, and that is as a result of what we inherited. But the executives that we've got are doing a great job to get us out of the situation we're in.
All right. Okay.
I don't have words. Because I don't know the conditions and the contracts thereof. But looking at the situation, the dire status of SABC, and the current scenario that is taking place in terms of the retrenchment and people earning so much. I don't know. Maybe they've got so very high skills. They are highly skilled. I don't know. Comrades here will judge for themselves, and whoever else who's listening will also judge for themselves. But it's very much scary. Do they get performance bonuses as well?
There was a question around the benchmark. If you compare salaries, you will clearly see that it is in line with the benchmarks of the executives.
Let's not go to the benchmark. That's why I democratically suppressed Comrade Kekan. Let's not go there. Maybe just answer the issue around performance bonuses. Is it part of the contract? I know they've just come in now. They've not finished a year. Is it part of the... Because never mind us sitting late at night here, there is no performance bonus in Parliament. There is no overtime. So that's why we may or may not even understand. Performance bonus is part of the contract, part of what is expected. And I always want a yes or no.
Yes, there is a performance bonus which is built into their contract if they hit the targets that have been set for them.
Great. I want you to round up. It's an extra 10 minutes from that other 10 minutes that I made. Here's the watch. It's 22.
You're giving me 10 minutes.
I'm saying you are already 10 minutes more beyond the original 10 minutes.
Chairperson, I think I'm done. I'll leave it for my comrades. But Chairperson, just before that, I just want to, to apologize for calling the name of Comrade Batabile Dlamini. I wanted to say Tabile Dlamini so that it's on record, Chairperson.
No, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, if they can just assist us,
okay.
those people who are doing it.
It's okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Comrades, I'll give Comrade Kekan. He was part of those who were to prepare. We'll also give him limited time, and then we'll move this way, and then when we're done, maybe Mente, Chilwane, Kekan will give you just to round off. Comrade Kekan.
No, thanks, Chair. No, I think you have assisted me because I was going to talk to the chairperson of the board because obviously in terms of the PFMA, he's the one who's supposed to account to us. There is a document here where you are saying there is a report. I think in the last meeting I raised that issue. The close-up report from the interim board. You are saying it is outstanding. What's the reason?
Through you, Chair, the handover report from the interim board is part of the pack. I can take members through it if they want, but it is part of the pack. It does reflect that there is significant progress that has been done.
No, that's fine. The handover report is there.
No. But I'm reading this document. Is this document from you?
Let me see. That looks like...
Schedule of SCOPA submission for meeting 14 November 2018.
Is that not Sfiso's handwriting?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a minute.
The final version of the document.
Just pull the mic closer to you. Yes.
The final version, Chair, of this report was too late for the pack that was sent earlier, which came with that annexure that you're looking at. But it.
Okay.
Now, the report is with you.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that's fine. I just wanted to get the reasons why. Because in the status, that's what you are saying here. And the other issue that I'll deal with is on the leadership. Obviously, as the board, you are guided by the annual strategic planning. You normally have strategic plannings that would guide you, that is for a particular financial year. Is that correct?
It's correct.
And that is supposed to obviously talk to that is the strategy that you would be applying. Would talk to the strategy of the institution. Is that correct?
It's correct.
Okay. Are you aware that the AG, in its findings, indicated that the annual shareholders compact was not concluded prior to the start of the financial year in consultation with the executive authority as required by Treasury regulation? The compact was admitted to the executive authority that is prior to the start of the financial year. However, this was only approved in February 2018. The question was why? And what guided you that is before that?
Honorable Member, what happened, there was a change of political leadership between the minister that we have currently and the minister that was in charge. So what was guiding the interim, we inherited from the interim board members, was approved. But because of change in leadership, the minister that was in charge of the portfolio didn't sign until then there was a reshuffle. That's why it was signed by the new minister when she came in.
But it does not, so the draft was there, it was only waiting for a signature.
That's correct.
Really? Just that, just a signature. And you went on for weeks and months without a legal document just because the signature was absent.
Yes,
All right. Okay.
Now, but my question is very simple. Then what guided you? Because obviously, you need to have a guide that for this financial year, you would be doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 20. Now, you are saying it was not signed. Now, what were you doing?
The truth of the matter is, it was drafted. The only thing that was missing was a signature. So we were working based on what was put together, though it had not been signed at the time.
Now, are you, by implication, saying the Auditor General is not correct to say it was only approved? That is in February 2018.
Honorable Member, I'm not disputing what the Auditor General found, because the document at the time when they were reviewing was not signed. So the approval then goes with the time at which the signature was appended to the document. So I'm not saying they are not correct with that finding. But as we sit now, we have a signed shareholder compact that is approved. On top of that, we then did the turnaround, which is what I took members through in the beginning.
I'm not going to talk about that is the future. I'm only going to talk about what happened. The AG is saying, as a result of the above, the key performance measures and indicators included in the shareholders' compact were not agreed between the accounting authority and the executive authority prior to the start of the financial year as required by Treasury regulations. Is that correct?
Honorable Member, yes, it is correct.
Now, my assumption is correct that you were just doing what you thought is correct. because obviously there was no agreement that is between yourself and that is the, there were no plans, let me put it that way.
That's correct, Honourable Member.
Okay. No, that is why we're experiencing that is these problems. My colleagues dealt with a number of issues. I'm only going to deal with that issue of the leadership and also the trade and other, that is payables. The AG also noted that trade and payables did not account accurately for all payables. As a result, payables were overstated by 706, that is million. This include broadcast costs, marketing costs, professionals and consulting fees. This was due to inadequate systems and processes to accrue, that is for expenses. Why did you fail to account, that is for, do you have systems? Let me put it that way.
Basically, linking on to what the CFO reported, we now have systems in place to assist us in managing those issues. But for further details, I will request the CFO to fill in details on the specifics.
Yeah, no. Well, what he needed was, do you have systems? If you want details, we'll give a follow-up question. Let's just confirm. Yes, comrade.
Do you have?
Yeah, she has confirmed. I was just saying details must depend on, if you want a follow-up, it should be up to you. But they have now confirmed, yeah, we have systems, they were not there, but now they are there. So it's up to you to take it forward.
Okay. The follow-up question obviously would be, what systems and procedures are now in place to record payables accurately?
Honourable Chair, if I may request the CFO to give the specifics.
Thank you, Chairperson. We perform monthly reconciliations on all our creditors' accounts. As a cross-check, we do not execute payment if the reconciliation isn't in place. And as a result, we are comfortable that we are now able to account for our trade and other payables accurately. The specific finding does relate to the 17 financial year. So we made, and it didn't prevail in the 18 financial year. So I think we've got sufficient systems in place now.
Are you saying in the next, that is report, we are not going to get a finding on this issue?
Chairperson, we're not supposed to get a finding on it now.
No. I think I'm the politician. You're supposed to be a technocrat, that's it. Please respond correctly. I'm saying, are you saying there won't be any finding on this matter in your next, that is in the next, that is AG's findings? All what I need from you is a yes or no.
Yes, Chairperson.
Yes.
Are you sure? All right. Yes, complete.
And Chair, on the issue of governance, particularly on the leadership, what is the situation now? Because that is linked to my question when I was making my preparations on the outstanding report from the interim board. Because in terms of the information provided here, unfortunately, it was indicated that is in the report that it was outstanding. Are you saying the leadership is stable now?
Thank you, Honourable Member. Basically, one of the key things that needed to be done was filling up the top 3 position. So the COO joined in February 2018. We had the CFO being appointed in June 2018, and then we had the CEO joining in July. So all the critical positions or vacancies have been filled. From a board perspective, we have 4 vacancies in the board that resulted from some members of the board resigning. The Portfolio Committee on Communications, they are busy with the process of filling those vacancies. So from a leadership perspective, we are stable. And in terms of what was required for the board members to be subjected to an induction process, that induction was also done, preparing the board members for the work that is expected of them.
Okay. Also on the issue of governance, the AG identified that there was a lack of appropriate risk management activities to ensure that threats affecting entity were effectively, that is, identified, monitored and responded to at the strategic level. Are you saying currently now, because I could see that you are confident that is in your response, are you saying that that's going to be the situation because you have appointed, that is, those people, and obviously there is a possibility that there might be stability that is in the organization?
Maybe let me start at the board level. The board has basically come up with subcommittees of the board. There is a finding with regard to the risk and audit subcommittee of the board that committee ordinarily needs to be led by a chartered accountant. And at the moment, we don't have a chartered accountant, but we've put people with relevant experience to help us with that committee. And all the critical elements that we highlighted requiring focus. For example, we have a technology and digital subcommittee of the board, because one of the key things that came out of the skills audit that was done in 2013, there was a need to focus on technology and digital skills. So we have a subcommittee of the board that looks into that. So from a board perspective, we've set up enough committees to focus on critical areas. From an operational level, the CFO did touch on the fact that we have now a risk department, though it's not fully staffed, but we are now having a sense of our risk and we're managing them. That's why we can project what's going to happen in the next 3 months and so forth, because we've put those systems in place.
In terms of the report from the interim board, because I think I indicated that in the last meeting, that they did a lot of work. But when you read your report, and from what my colleagues have been dealing with, unfortunately, it is very clear that, unfortunately, the situation has gone back. That is to, I mean, it has gone worse. Now, did you consider that is the report of the interim board?
For the comfort of the committee, what we did, we made sure that for this delegation, we bring some members who were part of the interim board. I'm going to request Mr. Seidu to just take us through where they left off and what did we pick as a permanent board.
I don't want window dressing. My question is very clear. There was a report prepared by Saki Keka, and this report is handed to Minyameze Lipoy. It does not mean that I must bring Minyameze Lipoy to the meeting. You must take over. That is Saki Keka. That's my question. Did you do that?
Yes.
Because if you have done that, the issues that we are dealing with here, we wouldn't be dealing with.
Yes, basically the permanent board was made up of the 5 members from the interim board. So from a skills and experience, there was no loss of skills because they are part of the permanent board. They did basically present the report on what they had done and what needed to be done. One of the things in the list that they'd given us was we need to put together a turnaround strategy. That was given. We did that. There was a need for us to focus or prioritize the filling of key position. That was done and completed. there was a number of other roles from a GE level, group execs, group exec HR, corporate affairs, MTI, and corporate affairs. All those vacancies were filled. This is just a list that they said, focus on these are urgent. Follow up on government guarantees. We've always been following on the government guarantee. That's why when we started the meeting, I updated the committee on where we are with our financial state. Wage negotiations was one of the things that was upcoming. That was done. And if you look at our wage negotiations, for the first time since last year, we've managed to give salary increases that are linked to CPI. That was one of the things that the interim board highlighted to us. There was a shareholder compact that needed to be submitted and be signed. That was completed. The issue of, for an example, the MOI that needed to be updated to be aligned with the judgment, with the Morajana judgment, that was done and it's been lodged with by the department. So we're just waiting for the confirmation that it's been finalized. So there's a number of things that the interim board had highlighted as the things that we need to focus on.
I thought we would have prioritized things that are immediately relevant to us. Internal controls, audit qualification issues. So they will relate to what is saying. The
Financial and performance management. Those are the issues. If you can respond to those issues.
Certainly, we did focus on it, on the issue of going concerned. I mean, when we came in as a permanent board, we took the work that they'd done. There was a need for us to update the request or the application for the government guarantee, which we did in collaboration.
Right.
Some of the systems that...
No, it's fine. It's fine. Because I hear the points you are raising, and they are correct to the extent that they come from the report. But I think his slant is more on issues that relate to our work of financial management, because even the guarantee that you want, you write to Treasury, you want a guarantee, and yet you do deviations without following their instructions. How do they help you? To give you money to use it the way you want. So I thought you would say, in relation to these matters of internal control and financial management, this is what the interim board said, this is what we did, because then that is closer to us. The other issues, they are relevant, but so I think that's where he is. And I'm sure you remember last week he raised the same question about from the interim board to the new board, has there been continuity, or was it just a stop and then you begin afresh? And I think that's where even his current question is coming from. So they got the report, Comrade Kekane, they have implemented it, or they're implementing it on all the aspects that the interim board had raised. I think that's what it's saying.
No, thanks, Chair. In actual fact, I would have to look at that report, because you see, I was misled by the response that you gave me, because I wanted to direct you clearly on those issues, but those are the issues that I wanted to get clarity on, because I know the issues that we have been dealing with, that is with the interim board, and particularly on the issues of the financial and performance management. Because if you look at the audit outcome now, it raises a number of issues which were raised, that is, whilst the interim board was still in place. Let me just indicate that is two of those issues that the AG indicated. The AG indicated that management did not implement adequate review procedures to ensure that indicators and targets included in the corporate plan were useful, and that information reported in the annual performance report was adequately reported with appropriate evidence. That was indicated, that is, to the interim board, and the interim board took a decision that they are going to focus on that. Did you look at that?
Honourable Member, there is focus on that particular issue.
But why did the AG also make a finding that is on the same issue?
If we look at that AG report, it was evaluating 2017-2018. So a number of the things that the interim board was dealing with were still going to form part of the report that is under review today.
Okay. Are you confident that going forward we are not going to get that is the same findings?
Yes, I'm confident. Part of my confidence comes from the fact that one of the key issues was lack of leadership or stability in critical areas. And now that we have permanent people responsible for these areas and performance contracts have been signed so people know exactly what is expected, we are monitoring these things. And in the beginning, when the CEO was taking us through, we're starting to see some increase, for an example, on the revenue line because the systems that have been put in place and we are monitoring and tracking those.
Chair, I'm excited with what you are saying in terms of you having warm bodies in those positions. But unfortunately, we normally have that is departments or entities that have people in those departments. Unfortunately, if you look at their audit findings, the situation does not talk to what the AG is raising. Now, what I need from you, hence I'm saying, fortunately today, all what I need confirmation. And I think you are aware that you are on record. And I'll be raising these issues that is with you. Are we in agreement?
Honourable Member, yes, we are.
Okay.
Round up.
No, thanks, Chair.
Oh. All right. Comrade Boy, Ross, KZN, for the state. I'll give comrades at most 10 minutes, and then I'll give the three comrades their last round. Yes, Comrade Boy.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chairperson of the Board.
Good morning, sir.
We have had, it's consistent with what we've been doing before. We have visited the SABC and we have had some engagements. The Auditor General says your vacancy rate is very high. Can you talk to that? Versus your retrenchment. How does that happen? And how did you come to be able to say, I need to retrench now? And from clearly what you are saying is that you've been busy filling positions, not from people internal, but from taking people from outside, which has become a tradition in the SABC. When you come in, you bring new people. That's why it's a bloated structure now. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that is because when we arrived in our visit to the procurement processes, I mean, where we go, we were made aware that they were not being recognized by the management. That was in 2016, China. Yes. They were not being recognized because they were treated as useless. That's why we have got this many auditing companies flooding and taking from the fiscus of the SABC. Is that continuous? Or what informs your approach? Because this is the information that we picked up in the SABC. And now the Auditor General says the vacancy rate is very high. But you have already went ahead and looking for retrenchment. What informs your approach?
Thank you, Honourable Member.
And maybe you can add to that your use of consultants as well. Just talk to the AG, say your vacancy rates, you are retrenching. What is the how's the situation like in relation to the use of consultants? Yeah.
Thank you, Chairperson. When it comes to the findings around vacancies, there were critical vacancies that needed to be filled, where we needed to look at the skill sets and the experience in relation to where we find ourselves. So for an example, when you bring a CEO, one of the key challenges for the SABC is that we have not ran things with a very business mind or a commercial sense. So it was important for an example, the CEO to get somebody who's got experience in running a commercial entity so that we can improve our financial situation. So there are instances where you find that because of where we are, we had to go external to get the required skills. There are instances where experience was in-house. For an example, GE Radio is an internal candidate. So there are roles where, because of the depth of experience that is sitting with the SABC, where we had to look from within. But there are areas where we felt that we needed to go to the market and get the best skills that are available to get us to a right situation. More especially because if you look at the SABC, about 85% of our revenue are commercial revenue, which means we have to go out there and compete with other players for the revenues, for an example. So that means we need to have the right, well-equipped individual as our competitors have, so that we can be able to deal with those. Now, in terms of the question around why then do you talk retrenchment when there are vacancies? We filled a lot of vacancies with the required skills, but the truth of the matter is, if you look at the findings of the Public Protector's report and the ad hoc committee report, there are instances where people were employed without looking at the needs for those skills, where people were just being employed, where people were promoted without looking at their contribution and basically the value for them to be promoted. The same thing with salary increases. So as a result of that, there is a genuine bloated structure in certain areas. When the CEO said we have over 490 managers at the SABC. Now we have a situation where one person from a span of control manages one or two people. And that cannot be allowed, because what it does, you end up with a structure that is top heavy. And that's why our focus will be to make sure that we take out some of the managerial layers. There's about 6 managerial layers at the SABC. So that's what informs what we are doing. But the second thing is, if you look at our salary bill of 3.1 billion, and looking at what we are making, your salary bill or your expenses must always follow the revenue or the income that you are making. At the SABC, we are consuming more than we are making.
You mean the salary bill or the salaries? Or the salary bill and the salaries?
Okay. Basically, I mean the wage bill in total at the SABC sitting at 3.1 billion. So when you look at those issues, then it is unavoidable for us that we need to optimize our structure to be fit for purpose. But also there's been a significant change in the broadcasting space where we need to have new skills. Let's say there's focus now on digital skills and technology skills. We're moving away from the analog platform, which means we need to be properly equipped for us to be able to compete with other players in the space. That's what informs what we're doing.
Okay, that's fine. And the use of consultants?
When you look at the consultants, the truth of the matter is there's been significant reduction in the use of consultant at the SABC. The consultant really that we have now, it's AG, legal fees, as well as maybe to a certain extent the SIU. There's quite a lot of work that SIU is doing. I mean, we've had 2 proclamations, and all of those things as the SABC, we have to pay for those, and it goes under the consulting line. And there's been instances where we needed external skills. For example, when we had to evaluate our channels, there was no expertise inside, so we had to go external to get properly qualified and experienced people to help us evaluate our assets, or rather our channels, so that we can be able to negotiate from an informed position.
All right. Comment, boy.
In all what you are saying, you see, for me, I'm trying to find what's fundamentally new to shift people out and retrench them than what you are saying. You are talking of an old institution. the SABC. It's not new. And for me, it remains relevant that what is it that those that you think, because if you talk about experience, you're talking about people who are in the institutions, not that are direct from outside. If you're talking about modernization, what capabilities have you built with inside the institution to be able to modernize people that are there? These are human beings. You see, and why would you use retrenchment to address these problems? Not to go direct. I mean, because the argument of the AG is that you're solvent, you see. And the sequence you're counting, I mean, you're talking to, is not giving me the answer to support you on this particular one. More than that, I'm saying to you, as the different institutions that are talking to, I mean, others were using secular clubs, others were using, I mean, Ferexmans. All these institutions are from outside. No capabilities built inside the institution. And this is what we raised. Now I'm a little bit taken back that you have not gone inside the institution. In the few months that you have taken leadership, you're already saying that let's chase people away. How does that happen? But also, you see, my last addition there is that the Auditor General, in his growing concerns, says management and the board must develop and implement an appropriate strategy to move the entity towards profitability, incorporating growth strategies for revenue and decreasing cost where necessary. This is what the Auditor General says, one of the trusted institutions that we have in this country. But I don't hear that from you. Have you read the Auditor General's report?
Honorable Member, yes, I have read the Auditor General report. I'm going to request the CEO just to expand on what we're doing internally around some of the issues that you've raised.
The difficulty I have, sir, is the PFMA that guides me expects you to answer. And you're the one who talks most of the time on the SABC. No CEO or any other person. And you make the decision on behalf of all of us on how you handle the matters internally in the SABC. Now, if you start shifting around, I would have to equally ask everybody to give answers. And I don't have that privilege. The chairperson is very strict about my time.
In terms of the plans, in terms of developing human resource capabilities, as the board, we can give a strategic guidance, but the implementation of the operational plans is done by the CEO, the COO and the CFO. That's why I was requesting the CEO to provide greater details.
No. That's fine. You're right. The conceptualization is done at your level, and they implement. And what was asking was the conceptualization. What do you have in place? Because I think what has come very much to the fore is the fact that your solution to the cash flow problem, it's retrench. And I thought to take advantage of that to say, no. Yes, considering retrenchment is one thing, but these are the other initiatives that we have in mind to generate revenue. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairperson. In the beginning of this meeting, I started by sharing with the committee what else we are doing, which can unlock more revenues and manage our cost. One of the things that is key that we are doing is dealing with what I refer to as legacy and governance issues. This is where we're trying to recoup or recover lost monies. When you look at, for example, our effort to implement the public protector's remedial action, there is about 60 million rand that is sitting with irregular promotions and appointments. So out of that process, we've approached the Labour Court to try and recover some of the monies. The work that is being done, for example, by the SIU, looking at helping us with the investigation of a number of contracts. And as we win those court cases, we stand a chance to recover some of the monies that were lost. That's basically one of the element. The second element that talks to how we can improve our financial situation is what I refer to as regulatory and policy issues. There's a number of things from a regulatory perspective that has made it impossible for the SABC to be financially viable. One of those, I touch on the mass carrier regulations, that there are other players who are carrying our channels and they are not paying us for it. And that's why as the SABC, we had to get SABC 1, 2, and 3 evaluated so that we can be able to go and engage with other players who are carrying our channels for free so that they can pay for those channels. It's a regulatory matter. It might look minute, but there's billions of rands that can be realized in just that one area. The sports rights, where...
No, that's fine. I think the sports rights, you really explain them in terms of...
Let me go for my conclusions, because I think if I was in the portfolio committee, you wouldn't survive. Because it's not convincing, your argument for retrenchment, you see. Your argument for insolvency. I mean, you're not convincing me as I'm seated here that how do you put capital versus human beings? I share the concern that was raised by one honorable member, that your timing also is a little bit problematic in the way you do. You see, also what you need to convince us is the personnel that you recruit, you see. It's more foreign than South Africans. And that raises a concern about what is your approach? Who are you looking for? South Africans don't have skills, so we must go all over the world. I'm just saying, but let me take again the Auditor General's report. I'm using this document as a point of reference, but it's ours. It's what the Auditor General has given us. Now he talks about key concerns, but I don't want to talk outside it. Now, one of the concerns of the Auditor General is you are not able to settle your liabilities when they are due. It's got nothing to do with human beings. It's concern about how you manage the institution. Now, you're not able to settle your liabilities. I was listening to that lady earlier. It's true that you don't even understand the institution, what's going on there. The second one is, did not have an adequate model to properly forecast cash flows. Management had forecasted a significant concerning increase in creditors payables over the financial year of 1.2 billion. The key initiative in the roadmap prepared in July 2018 was still at an infancy stage. These were not adequately factored into forecasted cash flows and were included were not adequately supported by underlying data, supporting evidence. Now, these are more practical things suggested by the Auditor General. That's why I'm saying that for me to be able to follow your retrenchment strategy, what informed it? Is it? Because it seems as if it's totally outside what is happening inside the SABC and what was our experience. We do sympathize with you, and we do know that I'm making progress, but we get guided by the Auditor General to assist you to rebuild the institution. But these are the concerning issues of liability to take you out of insolvency.
All right.
Why would you not do anything in relation to what the Auditor General is proposing to you?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. In terms of the appointment, we haven't appointed any foreigner as the SABC. The appointments that we've made are all South Africans. So I just want to make sure that it's corrected. In terms of the questions around cost, we have touched on this fact that there is a number of initiatives that we are driving other than retrenchment. So retrenchment is not the only solution to our...
I was at the SABC. The duplications that you find, or what the Auditor General have said then, is the identification of people inside the SABC. And Lakuma confirmed that to us, that the human resource people that went to that division, they couldn't tell us who is employed and who is not employed, because they didn't have the necessary identities of people there. This is what was raised.
All right. Okay. I think no. I think when we were at the Human Resource Department, there was a problem around authentication and even the verification of people's records. I think, yeah, we're talking about that issue, but also even around background checks, criminal records, and stuff like that, which was a concern about the kind of people that are employed and the certainty that the SABC will have around those kind of individuals. So I think it is in that context that is raising it. If it is something that, because yeah, we had someone from management. Yeah, it might be something that you may need to follow up. I just don't remember the gentleman who was with us, but I think the guy who was the head of that section.
Thank you, Chairperson. I can confirm without any shadow of a doubt that we haven't employed any foreigners. I do know the issue around the vetting. That was an issue that was raised during the interim board, which they started that process until it was then objected by organized labor in terms of the legalities and the constitutionality of vetting people at the extent at which it was done. So I am aware of that, and we did deal with it. So I just want to then continue and talk about the question around, our costs and how we manage that.
Very briefly.
As I was going through the three elements of the strategy, one of the key things around commercial and operational efficiencies is about 15 initiatives that we are driving. Out of the cost-cutting initiatives, other than the retrenchment, for example, we've saved over 400 million already. But the reality is, if you look at what gets consumed by labor cost, it is unsustainable for the SABC to be able to operate in a sustainable manner unless you tackle the cost, because the costs are too high and they don't talk to the revenues that we are making. And that's what really informs our strategy, to say we've got to drive costs down in a number of areas beyond labor cost.
Okay. Ross?
Thank you, Chairperson. I would like to touch on three issues. The first one being the crisis in the SABC with regards to the Minister not attending. The second one would be I'd like to speak on the guarantees and the challenges posed in getting those guarantees. And thirdly, I would like to speak to some of the subcommittees in terms of internal controls. But Chairperson, let me start with the absence of the Minister. If we have a new board, we have a new CFO, we have a commitment to turn the wheels around in South African Broadcasting Corporation. And then the executive authority was not present, as the Minister was not present in the last meetings, and today not present. And the reason given that the Minister is indisposed. Now, I've just Googled the word indisposed. Other meanings for indisposed is slightly ill, out of sorts, but perhaps not up to it, and perhaps other meanings that is negative. So it is a serious issue if the Minister is not present, because what we are facing in the South Africa SABC is a complete blowout in terms of the crisis that could happen. We have people in your being employed by SABC that would like to down tools because of retrenchments. We have serious cash flow problems, and we have a complete depletion of cash. Now, just in terms of an organization generating 7.2 billion and your employment cost is 40%, it poses a massive problem. And I think in this regard we need political leadership. Now, for me, it's a problem, Chairperson, that we continue with meetings where the executive is not present. Now, I would like to ask you, sir, have you had any engagements with the Minister lately with regards to the crisis in the SABC, and when did those meetings take place, and was it perhaps recorded?
Thank you, Honourable Member. We've had a number of engagement with the Minister on our dire financial situation. The latest, which was basically, we requested a meeting. We sent a letter to the Minister on the 31st of October. We sent that letter to the Minister, to the President of the Republic, and the Minister of Finance, requesting an urgent meeting to sit with them, because part of the challenge is director's liability. When you look at where we are, the fact that we're sitting with 1.3 billion debt, it means we're not able to meet our monthly financial obligation. So we've requested an urgent meeting to be able to sit and discuss those.
All
So
right.
there's been a number of.
No, that's fine. You requested the meeting, but was the Minister present? Did the meeting eventuate? Did it take place, and was Treasury present, and was there any engagements or return? You've written a letter. What was the engagement with the President in this regard?
So the letter was sent on the 31st. We haven't gotten a confirmation. I got an indication from the Chief of Staff that that meeting might happen next week. So, but the meeting has not happened.
The meeting with whom?
With the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Communications, and we've requested the President. So we've sent it to all three of them.
But you have not had any response yet?
We have not had any response yet.
Now, how imminent is the crisis in terms of not paying the staff? Today we are on more or less on the half of the month, 15th, 14th of the month, and you're looking at the crisis coming to fruition at the end of the month.
Basically, in terms of our projections, as the SABC, we need over 600 million rand a month for us to meet our obligations. So when we look at our projection, come January, we will basically collect around about 300 million, which is not sufficient for us to cover all our requirements. So our day zero, if I may use the term, is anticipated for March 2019, where we feel we will not be able, when we look at our projection, we will not be able to even pay salaries.
Okay, and you've taken note of the AG's depletion in terms of funds, that graph that was presented to us, or did you present that graph to us, in terms of the cash flow constraints?
Yes.
So at the end of the month, the staff will expect to have a salary, currently, this month.
This month we'll be able to pay
There's no immediate
salaries.
crisis.
Yeah.
The
This month
crisis
we'll
is in the shorter term, but not it's not an immediate crisis.
The crisis basically will be end of March next year.
Then with regards to the guarantee, certainly I think the executive authority should play a leading role in terms of this. What was your engagements with the Minister, and what actions has she taken? Has she engaged personally, perhaps with the Minister of Finance, but we've seen now we have a new Minister of Finance. Has she perhaps engaged with the previous Minister of Finance or with the present Minister of Finance?
Yes, the Minister did engage with the previous Minister of Finance. That's basically resulted, for an example, to us getting a borrowing letter reviewed of 1.2 billion, which was just a borrowing letter. So those came out of the efforts by the Minister to engage with the Minister specifically. And I am aware...
No, hang on. But those are wrong efforts. I mean, from the time of the interim board, they've been asking for a guarantee. And then all you get is a letter to be able to borrow. Or,
Yes, Chair, you're
I
quite
mean,
correct.
to up the limit.
Yeah.
It
The
doesn't
status of the
respond to
letter,
the issue.
unfortunately, did not grant you any loans because of the audit opinion regressing to a disclaimer, unfortunately. If we had an improved audit outcomes, it might have been different. But as you say, and I mean, your indication today to this committee is that the audit outcomes is due to the legacy of the past. Mostly so. And that there's a turnaround strategy. The turnaround strategy, has that been presented to the banks and financial institutions? Because we don't have the document, as my colleague Mr. Kakana said. I haven't seen the full document of the turnaround strategy as I sit here today. You still have it in your possession, but it was not sent to us. Am I correct?
We do have a turnaround strategy. It was not requested, but we can certainly share with the committee. We've got it. We've presented it. And it's what the executive have been using to engage with the banks, because basically banks wanted to know, what are you going to do to turn around the place? So we've used that turnaround strategy to engage with banks.
And the letter, in terms of what you had, was it also 1.3 billion? The letter to indicate that you that you can engage with financial institutions? How much was the letter, and what is your expectancy in terms of the guarantee?
So the borrowing letter was a 1.2 billion. That's what we're using to engage with banks, which has not yielded results like you have indicated due to the Auditor General disclaimer status. But in terms of the guarantee that we need, from the interim board days, they requested a 3 billion. That's what we still need now. And that 3 billion really will cover content, help us with liability, and also help us with the maintenance of our infrastructure.
In terms of the borrowing requirements, what other guarantees did you in the past acquire from government? How many guarantees? Is this the first guarantee?
There was a guarantee that was given to SABC in 2009, and that guarantee was about 1.4 billion, if I'm not mistaken. And that guarantee actually came with the conditions that we are actually trying to implement now. One of those was cut your salary bill, increase your revenue, and so forth and so forth. And what we're doing now was meant to be done 10 years back.
Okay, so basically in terms of the financial record, in terms of guarantees, this is your first big guarantee that you've requested.
That's correct, Honourable Member.
And hopefully you will engage and come back to the committee when there's progress in this regard. Hopefully, when will you have the meeting? You said by end of month?
From the Chief Director's indication, it might happen next week. I haven't seen any correspondence, but I was just talking to him, I think, yesterday.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think that it's very important that you get the guarantee. As a state institution and the national broadcaster, it is just imperative that you get a guarantee. But also noting the fiscal position of the country, it might be very difficult because of the contingent liabilities and the ratio of debt to GDP. I'm sure you're well aware of that, but we wish you luck in terms of this. Now, Chairperson, just my last question in terms of the subcommittees. I've just noted a couple of the subcommittees. Human Resources, Governance and Nomination Committee. This is in terms of human resources. And the roles and responsibilities of the committee include ensuring that the structure, the size, the composition, skill sets, and performance of the corporation is regularly reviewed and maintained at levels which are appropriate. Now, I'd just like to know, to make sure that we don't have these shadows lurking in the dark in terms of people still engaged in the subcommittees. Are these people, and this is your report given to us in September, living the legacy? I'm not sure if we should live the legacy in all aspects, but certainly the members is Mr. Kweyama, is the chairperson, and then other members. I'm sure you're aware. How many of these members were serving on this committee in the past years? Because I'm asking the question against the background you said. You indicated to us there's a bloated salaries bill, 40% of your revenue, and also with regards to the excessive salaries that we've noted today. Are these the members that approved it? What was the process as followed? Just very shortly.
Ms. Councillor Kanyile Kweyama, she's the chair. She was part of the interim board.
Okay.
The next one is Mr. Tsedu. Is part of the HR committee, was part of the interim board. And then the new member is Mr. Mohua, who came with the new permanent board. But two members of that committee were part of the interim board.
Mr. Aguma, did you mention his name?
Mohua. Board.
Oh, okay. Okay, fine. Okay, so these members cited here are not members of this committee anymore. Many of them.
No, they're still members of the HR and Remuneration Committee. Kweyama, Tsedu, and Mohua.
Okay, fine, but I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people on this committee. Are they still members of that?
No.
It is inter alia M.A. Rapela. Is that Audrey Rapela? Who's Mr. or Mrs. Rapela?
Oh, that was the old committee, but I was just sharing with you who are the new members who are part of the current committee, sorry.
Yes.
So
yeah,
there's only 4 members from the board that are part of the HR committee.
4 members of the board, part of the HR committee.
Yeah, so it's Kweyama, it's Tsedu, it's Mohuba, and Mr. Naidu, Krish.
Fine. M.A. Rapela, who's this person? Is it the former CFO?
Officials.
Is it officials?
Yeah.
It's another
Yeah.
person.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then, in terms of the Human Resource and Remuneration Committee, in terms of your salaries, was it approved? Did this committee approve in my mind, the excessive salaries now being paid to the executives of SABC?
The HR committee
They did approve
plays
it.
a role, yes.
Okay. And then in terms of, those are all, there's also a stakeholder committee. How many members are serving on that committee dealing with the stakeholder? Is the stakeholder the state? Are they engaging on the basis of perhaps guarantees? What are their roles? I think if I look at your, let me just quickly say, stakeholders relations, page 66. Is all these committees? Because it's also a social and ethics committee. And in their responsibility, it is in conjunction with the Audit and Risk Committee, the committee oversees and reviews the anti-corruption and bribery practices. Is this committee functional?
Social and Ethics Committee, yes, is still functional.
And who's chairing that committee currently?
Krish Naidu.
Mr. Naidu, okay.
Yes.
Fine. And it's also some new appointments on that from the board to this committee.
That's correct.
Thank you, that solves my problem. And then I think my colleagues has dealt with the risk management and audit committee. And ultimately, you accept that the board has the responsibility to establish a framework for internal controls. How efficient, and I think we've dealt with it, your internal controls. You are happy that you've established that framework. It's currently there, and you can provide it to this committee.
Yes, we have established it. We can.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks.
Chair.
Point of order,
Just a minute.
How long have I waited?
Just a minute. Yes. Hlengwa?
Chairperson, I'm seeing a reshuffle across there in the delegation. I was checking, where's the CEO? He has been out for a very long time. It was just out of interest.
No, it was reported from the beginning that he has a court matter to attend to. He was going to leave before the end of the proceedings. All right. Okay, let's continue.
Thank you, Chair. I feel like the impact player in the last 15 minutes. Chair, yeah. The big issue that SABC, the big issue in the news right now is the retrenchments. So I'd like to refer you to, you sent us a myriad of documents, obviously hoping that we wouldn't read them. If I can refer you to your Annexure M3, page 5. Right, you with me? Annexure M3, you sent it to me. It's called Forensic Report, Forensic Disposition. Final Report, Forensic Disposition. I hope it's not Forensic Indisposition. I've never seen a Forensic Disposition report in all my years in the industry, but anyway. Okay, so it's going to take you a long time to get to it, so let me help you. That's now. How do you feel the people that are due to be retrenched are going to feel about the fact that the Metro Music Awards party and after party cost 14 million, and that your CEO earns 5 million a month? How are they going to respond to that? That the after party costs 14 million rand in your CEO. So in the sea of luxury, people are going to be out of jobs. Can you give me a response, Chairperson?
Certainly, Honourable Member, these are the issues that, as part of our cost cutting, we've cut a lot of things to make sure that we deal with expenses that are not necessary. When I was reporting that our austerity measures have saved us around about 440 million rands. Of course, if people don't see any efforts being done to cut costs and drive efficiencies, they will be very, very disappointed.
Right, let's quickly move to the PFMA, which is our Bible here at SCOPA. And are you familiar, Chair, with the... So you don't have a CEO to rely on now, so... I hope the court matter he's going to is to recover money from someone. And I hope he's not being sued for something.
All right.
But anyway,
Okay.
Section 83(2) of the PFMA. That, if I paraphrase it, effectively says that you and all members of the board of an entity are responsible for everything. Okay. So that's all of you here. So you need to understand you have that joint responsibility. Now, if we go to the SABC inquiry, the SABC inquiry said that the new board, the interim or new board, this was exact quote, needed to urgently engage AGSA to assess all the irregular expenditure and fruitless and wasteful findings. Okay? So that's over a year ago. But what I read in your annexures M, 1, 2, and 3 is that nothing has actually been done to anyone really in terms of that irregular expenditure. What is your response to that? I'm going to dig into a little bit of detail here and there, but what is your response to that? That the reaction has been incredibly slow when your instruction was urgently engage.
As part of the delegation today, I also brought the chairperson of the Audit and Risk Committee so that he can also help with some of the details. If I may request Michael, to speak on the question.
Chairperson, through you. Thanks, Chairperson. I think following on that, there was the SIU took over a lot of the key investigations in terms of the irregular expenditure where there was unlawful actions. I think you got a very detailed report from the SIU. I think, to be fair to the previous acting CFO, there were acting positions which we've identified, and certainly a lot of the detailed investigations from a capacity point of view outside of the SIU, we have not been able to follow up on all of them as we've currently reported. But systems have been put in place since our new CFO has been put in place and appointed. A lot of changes have happened, and she can actually talk to the difference between what's happened in the prior year and what's happened now. But I think what we certainly can attest to, Honourable Member, is that this board takes it incredibly seriously. The opinion that we've shared with the Minister and the President of the Republic and the Finance Minister is this board is personally liable for whatever happens. We are directors of a company that is currently commercially insolvent. And I think to say that we don't take it seriously is not true with respect. I think we're all very, very conscious of our responsibilities in terms of the Companies Act and to the people that work at the SABC.
Right. I don't recall saying you shouldn't take it seriously. I asked why was there no urgent action. And let me come to that. You got your CFO here, all right? In terms of Section 51B of the PFMA, do you know it? Can you quote it to me? No, I don't think so. Okay. It says that you have responsibility to recover revenue. So, since you've been aboard, can you tell me how much money you've recovered? How much money have you recovered in the 1 year plus whatever that you've been aboard? As per the instruction of the PFMA. Now I'm asking the CFO. 10 Rand, 20 Rand, 50?
Chairperson, through you, no, none has been recovered.
So not one single cent. Okay, so the SABC inquiry told you to urgently engage the AXA on all these issues, and then the other sections of the PFMA, specifically 51B, enjoined you to recover money, but you have not recovered 1 cent. Right, yes, thank you, Honourable Boy. So now, your possible retrenchees are saying, there's 4.7 billion Rand in irregular expenditure in that figure. You haven't recovered a cent of that in a year. You're having 14 million Rand after parties, and you're paying a CEO 5 million, but we're being retrenched. Chair, let's come back to you. What's your response to that question? If I asked you that question as a person to be retrenched, what is your response? Why have you not recovered 1 single cent in a year? 1 single cent.
Thank you, Honourable Member. A lot of these issues are currently being in court, driven by the work that has been done by the SIU and Vaxman helping us with it. The truth of the matter is, for an example, let me take COO. We are trying to recover.
I've got all the reports. I have all the reports. I know exactly what you're going to say. Everything's in court. So, Chair, and I know I've got no time, so I just want to refer you now, because we've done the work, to report M1. Okay, that's again the forensic disposition report. And M1 on page 12. Chair, this is just give an example of how these guys work, and how, yes, we're going to take action and then nothing happens. So we had a situation here where a production coordinator in the Western Cape had gotten involved in doing an additional work as an independent contractor with another broadcasting outfit. Okay? So the recommendations, these were the ones that you said, CFO, that these were ongoing and what should be done. But unfortunately for you, in all these reports, and Chair, I could quote 23, 24 of these things, but I won't. This is just a perfect example. Now, you said to one of my colleagues, please don't be misled by this report, because this is a sort of an interim report, and this is what the forensic guys have advised should be done. So it's still going to happen. Well, in your final column it says completed. You commit yourself here. So, or not maybe you, but whoever compiled this commits themselves to it. So this particular person here, what was recommended, Chair, and this is interesting. Okay, what was recommended was institute disciplinary action because there was contraventions of the personal regulations policy, a conflict of interest policy, an additional work policy, a code of business conduct and ethics policy, SABC electronic mail operational policy. This is all important. The group SCM and preferential procurement policy, dishonesty, and also please recover the amount of 5,500 Rand in terms of salary while this person said they were on leave, and then also recover 52,439 Rand for getting extra work. So these are all the recommendations, Chair. Okay? Would you like to know what actually happened? The person got a final written warning after doing all of that, and they recovered 4,400 Rand from them. So now, as a locus classicus, Chair, this is what I'm saying. What are you doing? Internal audit, what are you doing if this sort of thing happens? And I looked in the Annexure M3 report, which is more your tenure, and I don't see much difference, except what I do see, glaringly obvious, is that you have no capacity to do work and you have to give it to SIU. That's what I see glaringly obvious. And it comes to my colleagues' questions about what capacity, I think it was Nami Boy, what capacity do you have to actually do this work? So I'm saying you've got a whole lot of people who are going to be retrenched. You haven't recovered one single cent, and you're not acting hard against people who are stealing the money. That's the answer you've got to give to this committee and, frankly, to your employees and, frankly, the country.
If I may request Mr. Tsedu to comment on the questions.
In the specific case that Honourable Member is referring to, we would need to go back and look at what the reasons were that
Sorry, Chair, I'm not asking for a response on specific cases. This is an example. I have been making notes here. You see all those numbers? That's every single page where there's one like that. There are, please don't cut in front of me. Don't. There are a number of these. I'm pointing out that something you need to pay specific attention to is proper consequences for people stealing money at your organization.
So in the absence of that particular case, on the rest of the other matters that need to be claimed back for, the process is underway. Investigations have been done both by internal forensic and by the SIU, and some of those things are in court already, pensions have been impounded so that people cannot claim them, so that when the process is over, we are able to go and get what is owed to us from those pensions.
I think maybe using the one case that he made, and I'm not sure how it is replicated throughout the report. I think the point is the need to avoid a slap on the wrist approach for wrongdoers, because it does not send the message that crime does not pay. I think that is the point.
Chair, as I said, I could spend an hour going through these reports and not wasting time, just getting to nitty-gritty. It repeats itself again and again and again, and I'm encouraging the board, because unfortunately you hide behind the veil of, well, we're doing work on it, and there's nothing I can argue with you about that. But certainly the next time you appear, we'll have these reports, and then we'll be able to say, well, what happened here? What happened in this particular instance? And then we need those answers. That's the assurance we need, and please start recovering money. That's what the law enjoins you to do. Chair, thank you, I'm done.
All right, thanks. Lengwa?
Thank you, Chair.
Then, Kuno, it will be you.
Chair, if I'm wrong, you will say so. Chair, the meeting we had at SABC with the interim board, or the meetings that we've had with the SABC, but specifically the ones at the SABC, those are parliamentary meetings, right? And so they fall within the ambits of the Powers and Privileges Act. So if you mislead us there, it's the same as misleading us here. Now, Chair, you can imagine my shock. Excuse me. At that meeting, we were told that the board had not been remunerated. They'd received nothing. I'm sure colleagues remember. And we were all taken aback that, the board is patriotic to the extent that the interim board, that, well, they're not going to take a pay. You can imagine my shock, Chairperson, on page 135, when I find that the board was paid. So, for me already, as a point of departure, I'm like, yeah, right. Least bit even interested to take anything seriously here, because we were given this perception that, we've got patriots in the swing of things who've not received a pay, and then boom, comes the annual report. Anyway, Chair, that's just as a way of my own caution in whatever has been said. Chairperson, can we be explained as to the bonus and commissions which was received by Mulaudzi T, who was a group executive? What great things did he do for the SABC to get such a wonderful bonus? In the sea of chaos, as we have seen over the past few years, he's the only one, except for the other gentleman who gave himself 11 million rand. I'm coming to that one. He seems to be the only other star employee who appears here. So what great things did he do, or she? Page 135 of the annual report.
Thank you, Honourable Member. If I may request Mr. Zedu to answer the question around the interim board first, and then the head of HR can help me with the point.
Don't worry, it was not a question. It was just a comment. I'm interested in the 345 as to that particular bonus.
Honourable Member, we take this committee very serious. Even if it's a comment, we think it's fair that we do provide information that is requested.
All right. No, that's fine.
The interim board, when it came into office, realizing the predicament, that the financial predicament that the institution was in, took a decision that it was going to defer payments until such time that the institution was in a better position. And those payments that the honourable member is referring to were made at the last point of the days of the interim board. As the interim board was going out of office, those payments were then made so that the new board that comes in shouldn't be inheriting decisions of another board. At no point was there a decision or a statement by the interim board that they would not be paid. The point was that the payments would be deferred.
All right, Mlaudzi's bonus, who is clarifying that?
I'm going to ask the executive HR to assist.
Thank you, Chairperson. The payment of the bonus incentive to Mr. Mulaudzi would have been premised on the achievement of key performance indicators as well as targets that were set with him at the beginning of the financial year. So at the end of the financial year, my understanding is that he would have achieved in line with what was agreed, and the bonus would have been paid based on that premise. Thank you, Chair.
What were they doing? Because it's quite a substantive bonus in a sea of chaos.
Thank you, Chair. The key performance areas pertaining to the group executive commercial services includes, amongst other things, sales and marketing, includes, amongst other things, the acquisition of advertisers. And therefore, this is just some of them, and therefore, the targets would be based on revenue.
So you don't know why Mr. Mlaus got his bonus? Because what you are telling us, you are speculating that it could be. In fact, you said could be. I just allowed you to flow, but I understood that you don't, sitting here, you don't remember specifically why, because I'm looking at the report, he's the only one. He got his 13th check, and then under bonus and commissions, he's the only one who got paid. So sitting here, you can't tell precisely what it is that he had done.
Chair, this is the reason why I zoomed into that one. It was precisely because it was the only one. So my expectation would be that here's this model SABC executive who, out of everybody, so am I inclined to believe that whatever area of jurisdiction they were assigned to, there's no problems, everything is fine. I would expect that we would, be, at the very least, be able to explain such a bonus.
Honourable Chair. Chair, through you. Chipiwa Mlaudzi is the head of commercial enterprise, which deals with advertising. So they have set targets that have to be met. Once you meet that target and go over it, you get a bonus. There was an earlier story that was run when the person who was head of that section before also got paid some amount of money. And people were saying, but the SABC is broke, why is it paying this person this amount? But that amount was for the years when she was still head of commercial enterprise. That's the deal that is cut with people in that division, including the salespeople who go out and actually find the advertising. They work on commissions.
You see why I have a problem with this is that it just seems and sounds irregular. We are dealing with a problem, and there's a salary that's been given to this person of 1.5 million rands, and there's the 13th check and other allowances of 413,000 rands. So they're earning a salary. And in a sea of chaos, we've got the nerve, cheek, and audacity to be paying bonuses. In a crisis. So you're sourcing advertising and whatever it is for the purposes, with all due respect, for self-gratification, that you are pursuing a performance in a sea of chaos. I'm just, for me, it's inconceivable. Chair, then there's the grand bonus of the infamous Mr. Motsonengo of 11.5 million rands. Now, I'm really interested in the circumstances of that particular one. And if anything irregular was found, has there been any effort to recover any money in that regard?
Honourable Member,
in light of what has been said, that recoveries actually have not happened. So what's the status of that particular bonus?
Honourable Member, specifically on the former COO, that 11.5 million was part of the bonus that was given to him as part of the deal that was there between SABC and the multi-choice. It is part of the 21 million rands that we are trying to recover from him. That matter is already in court, where we basically all have all the evidence.
How is Mtsweneng's bonus different from Mulaudzi's bonus?
Mulaudzi's bonus as a head of commercial services, those guys work specifically on targets that they get given. If they hit those targets and they exceed, then they will get a commission of some form. In the case of the former COO, for him to conclude a deal with the multi-choice, there was no provision that him doing his normal work, he will then be entitled to such a bonus. And that's the reason why we have taken the matter to court. On top of that 11.5, we're also trying to recover about 10 million rand linked to irregular wrong decisions that he made that resulted to the SABC losing money. So that particular issue was reported on by the SIU the last time they were here.
Just to go back to Mr. Mlaudzi. So what's the salary for that they got? So I'm trying, Bruce, Chairperson, you've triggered something in my mind. You said if more than their work along those lines. So why were they earning 1.5 million rands?
Honourable Member, I don't have the contract and the target for him with me here, so I won't be able to provide the specifics. But depending on the deal that the person signed, there will be instances where you get given target to say, if you achieve, let's say, 80% of this, you'll get your normal salary. But if you exceed a certain target, that's how bonuses and commission normally works.
All right. So that being the assumption, so I'm going to treat it as such. Of all the people cited here on page 135 and 136, with the exception of Mr. Mtsweneng, of course, how many of them had targets? Roughly. So I'm going to leave let me leave the board and the non-executive directors and start with senior management in the category in which Mlaudzi falls under. So those people would have targets.
As Honourable Member,
generally,
as the Honourable Member is now going below the top execs, I'll request the Group HR to assist in
I think, can we answer that truly at the level of principle, that yes, from the CEO downwards or whatever, there will be targets that are set in terms of their performance. I think he wants it at that level. If we have confirmation, then maybe if he has a follow-up question for details, then we can go down.
Yeah, certainly. When the CFO was reporting, we've signed performance contract, which specifically then will indicate what's the minimum requirement, what's the target, and what's the exceed. Right. So that is in place. We are struggling with the performance contract from a bargaining unit, but everybody from CEO downwards, that has been sorted.
Okay, so all these people have got targets, which if they gloriously exceed, they will get a bonus. All of them, except for one, didn't meet their targets? The whole lot? I would be very, very worried if I was... See, just one out of... If I counted here, there's more than 20 names here, and only one would have met targets to the point that they would receive their bonus. So are all these people performing below targets? I'm just trying to look at the type of executive management that we have.
I think a bonus only kicks in once we exceed what is expected of you. When you do your normal job, you earn your salary.
So none of them except one exceeded.
Well, maybe your question should be the other way around. The targets for Mr. Mulaudzi.
The extent to which were they reasonable targets or they were friendship targets. I use the term relatively, euphemistically. I just worry, Chair, that we are dealing with unless of course the senior management is overstretched and they are given unreasonable targets and there was just one person who, was in a comfort zone. I raise all of this, Chairperson, in relation of the fact that my follow-up question is the extent to which the standardization of salaries for people being appointed as a norm at the SABC. See, all of us here who are not chairs, if you look at the parliamentary handbook, you will be told that you are at level 1, we are MEM1, and you know it's public what it is that these members earn. Then ME2, Whipari, chairperson, it's standard. I'm interested to know the standardization which takes place at SABC. Or is it the case that we look at you in the eye and say, well, I like you and I know you from 20 years back, and if you're at Marawa, you get 5 million rands and you can come back to the SABC. If you're not, you're just a street journalist who does not know anybody in the echelons, well, you can do the 100,000 K. What's the process? What's the procedure? Because I'm failing to understand, Chairperson, what I see as a glaring discrepancy in terms of achievement of persons. So is there such a process? Because I would hate for us to retrench people on the basis of what is not standard, borderline irregular and concerning. Because I think that was the question that you democratically suppressed earlier on, but I would like to zoom to it, Chair.
Yes, of course, we use democratic centralism here. So, you can
Thank you,
continue.
Chairperson. When